In this eye-opening story, we explore a tense and unexpected incident that occurred aboard Horizon Airways Flight HA-17. A flight attendant confronted an elderly black man seated in first class, only to discover moments later that he was a highly respected retired military general. The encounter sheds light on issues of prejudice and the importance of treating everyone with dignity, regardless of appearances. This tale begins with Major General Daniel Carter, a retired veteran of the National Armed Forces who had spent decades serving his country. On this particular day, General Carter was heading to Savannah, Georgia, where he would attend a ceremony honoring his distinguished career. Holding a first-class ticket purchased by his son Marcus, General Carter was simply looking forward to a peaceful flight. Yet what awaited him was far from what he expected. "Dad, I've booked a first-class ticket for you." "No worries this time," Marcus said with enthusiasm over the phone. General Carter frowned, his tone calm, but questioning. "First class, Marcus? You know I'm not one for extravagance." Marcus interrupted, his voice resolute. "Dad, this isn't about luxury, it's about respect. After all you've sacrificed, this is the least I can do for you." A long pause followed before General Carter sighed and replied, "All right, son, I'll go. But you know how I feel about these kinds of things." Marcus chuckled softly. "I know, Dad. But sometimes people need a reminder of who you are and what you've done." Major General Daniel Carter had dedicated his life to serving his country. His accomplishments and sacrifices were etched in every medal that adorned his uniform. A dark navy jacket, crisply pressed and gleaming with gold epaulettes that symbolized his rank. Rather than dressing casually like many passengers, he chose to wear his formal attire, believing it reflected his deep respect for the occasion he was traveling to attend. Clutching a small black suitcase in one hand and a military history book in the other, General Carter moved with steady, purposeful steps. His outward composure radiated authority, yet a closer look into his eyes revealed humility, a trait cultivated by years of service. General Carter was traveling to Savannah for a ceremony that he felt unnecessary but meant the world to his son. "I don't need public recognition," he had told Marcus. "I was just doing my duty, like thousands of other soldiers." For Marcus, however, this was an opportunity for the world to acknowledge the quiet sacrifices his father and countless others had made in service to their country. At the Horizon Airways check-in counter, General Carter handed over his ticket and identification to the attendant, a young woman who immediately noticed his uniform. Her face lit up with admiration as she spoke. "Good morning, sir. You're on flight HA-17 to Savannah, correct?" Carter nodded, his deep voice steady. "That's right. Here's my ticket." The attendant examined the details, her smile widening as she returned the ticket. "You're flying first class. Thank you for your service, General." With a polite nod, General Carter proceeded to the first-class cabin. As he settled into his seat, he couldn't help but notice the curious glances directed his way. His formal attire and modest demeanor stood in stark contrast to the flashy, polished image often associated with first-class travelers. But General Carter was unbothered. He placed his small suitcase in the overhead compartment, opened his book, and began to read. Only minutes later, a flight attendant approached his seat. Her name was Olivia Bennett, a young professional known for her adherence to procedure. As she surveyed the cabin, Olivia's gaze landed on General Carter. His silver hair and military uniform seemed out of place among the expensive suits and designer bags she was used to seeing in first class. A flicker of doubt crossed her mind. "Does he really belong here?" she wondered. Hesitating briefly, Olivia continued her rounds but couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. Her instincts told her to double-check. Moments later, she returned to General Carter's seat, offering a polite but firm smile. Olivia Bennett paused near the seat of General Daniel Carter, her faint smile masking an inner tension. She kept her tone polite, but there was a stiffness that revealed her unease. "Excuse me, sir," she began. "May I check your ticket, please?" General Carter slowly looked up from his book, his calm, deep eyes meeting hers with a silent question. Without a word, he nodded and reached into his coat pocket, handing her the ticket. "Of course," he said, his tone steady and composed. Olivia took the ticket, glancing at it before scanning it on her handheld device. The results were clear. First class, valid. There was nothing unusual about the booking. Still, the sight of this quiet man in his formal military uniform didn't align with the image she had of typical first-class passengers. She handed the ticket back, her voice tinged with a hint of doubt. "Thank you, sir. Everything seems to be in order," she said. General Carter gave a polite nod and returned to his book. Olivia continued moving through the cabin, but the uneasiness gnawed at her. Something about him felt out of place, and she couldn't shake the thought that a mistake might have been made. Minutes later, as General Carter remained engrossed in his book, he sensed Olivia standing beside him again. This time, her demeanor had shifted. Her expression was no longer merely professional but stern, and her tone lacked the warmth from before. "Sir," she said, her voice firm, "I'm afraid there may have been a mistake. This seat doesn't seem suitable for you." Carter looked up slowly, raising an eyebrow as he set his book on his lap. He tilted his head slightly, as if to ensure he had understood her correctly. "Not suitable?" he asked, his calm tone laced with curiosity. "What do you mean by that?" Olivia hesitated, caught momentarily off guard by the sharpness of his gaze. Quickly regaining her composure, she explained, "We've double-checked the information. It appears that your ticket doesn't match this seat. I'll have to ask you to move to the economy cabin." For a moment, silence hung between them. General Carter's eyes remained fixed on her, unblinking. Though he said nothing, his composed presence conveyed an unspoken challenge that made Olivia uncomfortable. "My ticket was confirmed at check-in," Carter replied, his voice calm but firm. "There is no mistake." Olivia bit her lip but pressed on, her tone unwavering. "Sir, this is standard procedure to ensure accuracy in seat assignments. I hope you understand." General Carter took a deep breath, a flicker of frustration passing through his eyes before his expression softened again. Decades of service had taught him the value of composure, whether in the chaos of battle or moments of perceived injustice. "Very well," he said quietly, his voice measured. "If you believe I don't belong here, I'll comply with your request." Closing his book carefully, Carter placed it in his bag. Rising from his seat, he adjusted his uniform and retrieved his suitcase from the overhead compartment. As he stepped into the aisle, the entire first-class cabin seemed to hold its breath. Some passengers glanced at him with curiosity, others with confusion, as he made his way toward the economy section. Despite his outward calm, a quiet sense of hurt lingered in the air around him. But Carter, ever the disciplined soldier, believed in the power of silence over conflict. The first-class cabin grew quieter after his departure, but a subtle unease settled in. Olivia continued her duties with a veneer of professionalism, yet a flicker of doubt lingered in her mind. The decision to ask General Carter to leave his seat didn't sit right with her, though she couldn't fully articulate why. Nearby, a man in his early 40s, Christopher Hale, lowered his business magazine and fixed his gaze on Carter's retreating figure. A tech entrepreneur known for his sharp instincts, Christopher wasn't usually one to meddle in others' affairs, but something about the scene unsettled him. Christopher's thoughts drifted to conversations he'd had with Marcus Carter, one of his closest friends. Marcus had spoken often and fondly about his father, describing him as a man of unwavering principles, a leader who had taught him the values of humility, duty, and loyalty. "My father doesn't need recognition or titles," Marcus had once told Christopher. "All he cares about is knowing he did his duty as a soldier." Watching General Carter quietly leave the first-class cabin, Christopher suddenly connected the dots. There was no mistaking it. The man who had just been asked to leave was Marcus's father, the same man he'd admired from afar through his friend's stories. Christopher's jaw tightened as he set the magazine aside. He knew he couldn't let this slide. Something about what had just transpired felt deeply wrong, and it stirred a sense of obligation within him. As the plane continued its journey, an unspoken tension hung in the air, hinting that this incident was far from over. General Carter's quiet dignity had already left an impression, but what would happen next would set the stage for a reckoning none aboard Flight HA-17 could have anticipated. Christopher Hale watched Olivia Bennett closely as she moved through the first-class cabin, serving drinks to other passengers. He leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Excuse me, miss. I noticed you asked the passenger in seat 2A to move to economy. Can you explain what happened?" Olivia hesitated, the question catching her off guard, but she quickly regained her professional demeanor. "Yes, Mr. Hale," she said with a composed tone. "I was conducting a ticket check and found that the seat wasn't suitable for him. It's a standard verification process." Christopher's brow furrowed. "Not suitable?" He had a first-class ticket. Olivia maintained her stance, her voice steady but defensive. "I believe there may have been an error during the booking process. We need to ensure everything is in proper order." Christopher didn't press further, though he knew this had nothing to do with a booking error. It was clear to him that the decision to move General Daniel Carter had been based solely on assumptions about his appearance. He studied Olivia's expression for a moment, as if committing it to memory, then leaned back in his seat and pulled out his phone. Typing quickly, he sent a message to Marcus Carter, General Carter's son, on the other side of the country. In his New York City office, Marcus was in the middle of a crucial business meeting when his phone buzzed repeatedly. Seeing Christopher Hale's name on the screen, he frowned. Christopher rarely contacted him during work hours. Signaling to his team to pause, Marcus stepped into the hallway and answered the call. "Chris, what's going on? I'm busy." Christopher's voice came through, urgent and serious. "Marcus, this can't wait. Your father is on the same flight as me, and I just saw something that will infuriate you." Marcus stiffened. "What happened?" "He was asked to leave his first-class seat and move to economy," Christopher explained. "I saw the flight attendant check his ticket, and everything seemed fine, but she still insisted he move. Your dad didn't argue, he just quietly gathered his things and left." Marcus's voice turned cold. "That's impossible. I booked his first-class ticket myself. There's no way it wasn't valid." "I know," Christopher said, his tone grim, "but it didn't seem to matter to her. Your dad didn't make a scene, but I could tell he was hurt. You need to handle this." Marcus's jaw clenched as anger surged through him. His father, a man of dignity and discipline, would never cause a disturbance. If he hadn't reacted, it wasn't because he agreed. It was because he refused to escalate the situation. "Send me the flight number," Marcus said firmly. Christopher quickly provided the details, and Marcus ended the call. Without hesitation, he contacted Horizon Airways' customer service line. At the Horizon Airways Support Center, a representative answered the call with a polite, professional tone. "Thank you for calling Horizon Airways customer support. How can I assist you today?" Marcus's voice was calm, but each word carried a sharp edge. "This is Marcus Carter. I need you to address an urgent issue on Flight HA-17 from Denver to Savannah. My father, General Daniel Carter, a retired military officer, was just asked to leave his first-class seat without a valid reason." The representative paused briefly before responding. "Mr. Carter, I'm very sorry to hear about this. Let me take a moment to document the details. I'll contact the flight crew immediately to investigate and resolve the issue." Marcus's tone grew firmer. "Don't just investigate, take action. I want you to instruct the crew to return my father to his rightful first-class seat immediately. If this isn't resolved, I'll escalate the matter to your executive team and bring in my legal counsel. This isn't just an insult to my father, it's an insult to a veteran who has dedicated his life to serving this country." The tension in Marcus's voice was unmistakable. The representative responded with urgency. "Yes, sir. I understand the seriousness of the situation. Please hold while I contact the flight crew right away." In the flight attendant's break area aboard Flight HA-17, Olivia was reviewing the passenger list when the intercom phone rang sharply. She picked it up, pressing it to her ear. "Olivia Bennett speaking," she said. The stern voice of Linda Graves, Horizon Airways head of customer service, came through the line. "Miss Bennett, this is Linda Graves from Horizon's headquarters. We've received a serious complaint about your treatment of passenger Daniel Carter, a retired Major General. Explain why you asked him to leave his first-class seat." Olivia's heart sank, and her voice wavered as she stammered. "Miss Graves, I felt the passenger didn't belong in that seat. I suspected there might have been an error in the booking process." Linda's voice turned icy. "You know his ticket was completely valid. Did you even consider who he is? This wasn't just poor judgment. It was disrespectful and unacceptable. Your actions have caused significant harm, and we demand that you return Mr. Carter to his seat immediately. You will also be required to provide a full explanation for this incident once the flight lands." Olivia's hands trembled as she placed the phone down. Her mistake had spiraled into something far greater than she had anticipated. This wasn't just about moving a passenger. She had disrespected a national hero. Meanwhile, Christopher Hale could no longer stay silent. Watching General Daniel Carter being mistreated had sparked something in him. He stood up, driven not just by a sense of loyalty to his friend Marcus, but also by a need to challenge how society treats those who deserve respect. Would his actions make a difference? Christopher wondered, as the pursuit of justice began to unfold. Olivia stepped out of the flight attendant's break area, her face pale and her heart heavy with regret. She made her way to the economy cabin, her eyes scanning the rows of seats until she spotted General Carter near the back of the plane. Seated in a cramped economy seat, Carter appeared unbothered. His military history book lay open in his lap, and his calm demeanor radiated an air of quiet dignity. Yet to Olivia, that calmness only heightened her guilt. She swallowed hard as she approached. This wasn't just any passenger. General Daniel Carter was a retired officer who had served his country with honor. He deserved better than this. Several passengers turned their heads as Olivia stopped in front of Carter's row. Their gazes held a mix of curiosity and silent judgment, some having witnessed the earlier incident. Carter looked up slowly, his eyes meeting hers. Though he said nothing, his calm gaze seemed to expect an explanation. "General Carter," Olivia began, her voice wavering despite her efforts to keep it steady. "I want to sincerely apologize for what happened earlier. I made a mistake. Your ticket is completely valid, and you have every right to sit in first class." Carter closed his book and placed it gently on the small tray table before him. He regarded her in silence for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, in a deep and steady voice, he spoke. "Miss Bennett, I'm not one to hold grudges over minor mistakes. But your actions today weren't just an error. They revealed something deeper. They reflect how you perceive and judge others." Olivia stood frozen, unable to look away from his piercing gaze. She couldn't defend herself because she knew he was right. Carter continued, his tone unwavering. "I've spent my life serving this country, not for recognition, but because it was my duty. Your duty as a flight attendant is to treat every passenger with fairness and respect, no matter how they look or who they are. This isn't about rank or status, it's about respect." Olivia lowered her head, tears stinging her eyes. "You're absolutely right, General Carter. I allowed my biases to cloud my judgment. I deeply regret my actions, and I hope you can forgive me." Carter studied her for a moment longer before giving a slight nod. "You've acknowledged your mistake, and that matters, but what truly counts is what you do next." Olivia looked up, sensing the forgiveness in his words, though the weight of her errors still pressed heavily on her. Determined to make amends, Olivia quickly arranged for General Carter to return to his rightful seat in first class. She personally carried his bag as a gesture of apology. As Carter stepped back into the first-class cabin, the other passengers turned their heads. Some appeared surprised, while others smiled faintly, as though justice had been restored. Christopher Hale, seated a few rows away, gave General Carter a subtle nod as he passed. When Carter settled back into his seat, Christopher leaned forward and spoke in a low voice. "General Carter, I've already informed Marcus about what happened. He's handling it from his end." Carter looked at Christopher with a small, grateful smile. "You're a friend of Marcus?" "Yes, we're close," Christopher replied. "He speaks so highly of you. Marcus is incredibly proud of you, sir." Carter said nothing further, but there was a quiet glimmer of pride in his eyes, a reflection of the bond he shared with his son. While Carter had returned to first class, Olivia knew her work wasn't done. She had made a critical mistake, one she would have to reckon with. But for now, she had taken the first step toward making things right. In the cabin, a sense of quiet restoration settled over the passengers, though the weight of the earlier incident lingered. General Carter's return to his seat symbolized more than just an apology. It was a small but significant act of justice. As the plane continued its journey, Christopher watched Olivia from his seat. He could see the conflict in her expression, the weight of her realization. He hoped she would learn from this moment, just as everyone aboard Flight HA-17 had been given a lesson in respect and humility. But for General Carter, the journey wasn't just about a seat or an apology. It was a reminder of how far society still had to go in recognizing the value of dignity and fairness, not just for him, but for everyone. The story of Flight HA-17 was far from over. Justice had begun, but the ripple effects of one small action were only just beginning to unfold. Olivia Bennett barely had time to compose herself after returning General Daniel Carter to his first-class seat when her phone rang again in the break area. The voice on the other end sent a chill down her spine. It was Nathan Gray, the CEO of Horizon Airways. "Ms. Bennett." "This is Nathan Gray," he said, his tone cold and authoritative. "I've received a direct report from customer service regarding your actions on Flight HA-17. Do you realize the gravity of what you've done?" Olivia's throat went dry. "Mr. Gray, I understand the mistake I made. I've already returned General Carter to his seat and apologized." Nathan's voice grew even sterner. "Returning him to his seat is just the beginning. Do you even know who he is? General Carter isn't just another passenger. He's a retired major general and a national hero. But let me make one thing clear, it doesn't matter who he is. Every passenger deserves respect. Your actions didn't just insult him, they've damaged the reputation of this airline." Olivia stood frozen, unable to form a response. Nathan continued, his tone unyielding. "When this plane lands, you will stay behind to provide a full, detailed report on this incident. Let me be clear. We are considering severe disciplinary action. This is not just about you. It's about ensuring every team member learns from your mistake." The call ended abruptly, leaving Olivia standing alone, the weight of her actions pressing heavily on her shoulders. Meanwhile, in his New York office, Marcus Carter received a message from Christopher Hale. "Your father has been returned to first class, and they've apologized." Marcus felt a small measure of relief, but knew this wasn't over. His father deserved more than just an apology. This incident required real accountability. As a seasoned entrepreneur, Marcus understood the importance of reputation, not just for individuals but for corporations too. He opened his laptop and composed a message to Linda Graves, Horizon Airways head of customer service. Subject: immediate follow-up on Flight HA-17 incident. "Dear Miss Graves, thank you for addressing the situation involving my father, General Daniel Carter, on Flight HA-17. While I appreciate your prompt response, I would like a detailed report on the actions Horizon Airways plans to take to prevent similar incidents in the future. This should serve as an opportunity for Horizon to not only improve its service but also set a standard for fairness and respect for all passengers. I look forward to your response. Sincerely, Marcus Carter." Back on the flight, the atmosphere remained tense. General Carter sat quietly in his first-class seat, but the earlier incident lingered in his mind. Despite his calm demeanor, he couldn't entirely shake the feeling of being judged unfairly. Something that stung deeply for a man who had faced life-and-death situations in service to his country. A few rows away, Christopher Hale watched the general discreetly. He could see that Carter was trying to maintain his composure, but the injustice of the situation was hard to ignore. Christopher wasn't just angry on Carter's behalf. He saw this as a moment that reflected a deeper issue, one that wasn't confined to this flight or this airline. Christopher recalled the look in Olivia's eyes when she had asked General Carter to move. It wasn't hostility, it was bias. A quiet but deeply ingrained prejudice, the kind that so many people carry without realizing it. In the cockpit, Captain William Drake, a seasoned pilot with over 2 decades of experience, received an urgent notification from the airline's ground operations. A message flashed on the internal communications screen, requesting immediate contact with Horizon Airways headquarters. Drake adjusted his headset and pressed the communication button. The calm but serious voice of Linda Graves came through. "Captain Drake, I need to confirm whether you are aware of an incident involving passenger Daniel Carter in the first-class cabin." Drake frowned slightly as he flipped through the notes in the flight logbook. "I haven't received any reports from the cabin crew," he replied. "What's going on?" Linda provided a brief but pointed explanation. "One of your flight attendants, Olivia Bennett, asked General Carter, a retired Major General, to leave his first-class seat and move to economy without a valid reason. The situation has since been addressed, but it has caused significant issues, and we need to ensure no further problems arise. Drake's expression hardened. As a former military pilot who had transitioned to commercial aviation, he understood the weight of what had occurred. "Thank you for letting me know," he said firmly. "I'll address it immediately." Captain William Drake leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed as he absorbed Linda Graves' explanation about the incident involving General Daniel Carter. As a former military pilot who had transitioned to commercial aviation, Drake understood better than most the respect owed to those who had served. Taking a deep breath, he replied, "Thank you for informing me, Linda. I'll handle this immediately." Ending the call, Captain Drake activated the plane's internal communication system and summoned Olivia Bennett to the cockpit. When Olivia arrived, her tense expression betrayed her anxiety. She knew that being called by the captain during a flight was never a good sign. Drake swiveled his chair to face her, his sharp gaze fixed on her. "Miss Bennett," he began, his voice calm but firm. "I've just received a report from headquarters. Did you ask a first-class passenger to leave their seat without a valid reason?" Olivia lowered her head, her voice shaky as she responded, "Yes, Captain. But I corrected the mistake and returned him to his seat. I realize now that I was wrong." Drake's frown deepened, his tone turning sterner. "Do you know who that passenger is?" "That's Major General Daniel Carter, a man who represents not just the military, but the pride and sacrifice of this nation. Asking him to leave his seat wasn't just a personal insult, it's a stain on this airline's reputation." Each word felt like a blow to Olivia. While she had known she'd made a mistake, she was only now beginning to grasp its magnitude. Drake continued, his voice steady but uncompromising. "This isn't just about General Carter. It's about how you view and treat every passenger. I don't ever want to see anyone, no matter who they are, subjected to such disrespect. As a flight attendant, your responsibility is to ensure fairness and comfort for all." Olivia nodded, tears welling up in her eyes as she fought to keep them from falling. "I understand, Captain. I'm deeply regretful, and I'm ready to take full responsibility." Drake took another deep breath, his tone softening slightly. "Do your job well for the remainder of this flight. But once we land, I'll be submitting a full report on this incident. This isn't just a lesson for you, it's one for the entire team." Olivia bowed her head and left the cockpit. Guilt and fear churned inside her, but beneath it all, a faint resolve was growing. She knew she had to change, not just to atone for her mistake, but to become a better professional. When Olivia returned to the first-class cabin, she saw General Carter sitting quietly, reading his book. His gaze no longer carried the sharpness from before, but she still felt the weight of her actions. Summoning her courage, she approached him once more. Bowing slightly, she said softly, "General Carter, I want to thank you again for accepting my apology. You were right. What I do next is what truly matters." Carter looked up and offered a faint smile. "Miss Bennett, I don't expect perfection from anyone. We're all human, and humans make mistakes. But what I've learned in the military is that mistakes must become opportunities for growth." His words, though not harsh, carried a gravity that felt heavier than any reprimand. Olivia nodded, his message resonating deeply. Meanwhile, Marcus Carter received an email from Linda Graves. In it, she assured him that Horizon Airways would conduct a full internal investigation and implement measures to prevent similar incidents. Marcus read the message with some satisfaction, but he wasn't fully convinced. Opening his laptop, he quickly composed a response. Subject: Follow-up on Flight HA-17 incident. Dear Miss Graves, thank you for your prompt response. However, I would like to see a concrete action plan with a timeline for implementing the proposed improvements. If Horizon is truly committed to change, I expect clear results within the next 30 days. This isn't just about my father. It's about ensuring that every passenger is treated with the respect they deserve. Sincerely, Marcus Carter. Marcus understood that the fight for fairness wasn't a short sprint, but a marathon. He was willing to invest the time to ensure that this story became a meaningful catalyst for change. As Flight HA-17 approached its destination, the tension within the cabin began to subside. The sound of the captain's announcement echoed, signaling passengers to prepare for landing. General Carter quietly retrieved his carry-on luggage and stepped out of the first-class cabin. His calm demeanor concealed a complex mix of emotions. Not anger, but disappointment. For him, this incident wasn't just a personal inconvenience. It was a reflection of a deeper societal issue, the lack of fundamental respect. Christopher Hale watched him as he left, his thoughts swirling. He knew this incident wasn't just about one man or one mistake. It was a wake-up call for everyone on board, and for the airline as a whole. As the plane touched down at Savannah International Airport, the journey seemed to end for most passengers. But for some, it was only the beginning of the consequences they would soon face. For General Carter, this flight had been a reminder of the long road ahead in the fight for fairness and dignity. And for Olivia, it was the start of a journey toward redemption. One she knew would require more than words. It would demand actions that spoke louder than apologies. In the VIP lounge of Savannah International Airport, Horizon Airways' leadership team had convened in full force. CEO Nathan Gray, head of customer service Linda Reeves, and several senior executives sat around a table, their faces marked with concern. They understood the gravity of the situation. If mishandled, the incident involving General Daniel Carter could spiral into a public relations disaster. Linda held a thick file in her hands, her voice measured but serious. "Nathan, we need to resolve this matter in the most effective and transparent way possible. General Carter isn't just a retired military officer, he's a symbol of national pride. If this story reaches the media, Horizon's reputation will take a massive hit." Nathan's expression tense, nodded. "I'm fully aware. We don't just need to apologize. We must implement immediate and meaningful changes. General Carter won't let this slide, and from the email I received, his son Marcus Carter won't either." Linda sighed. "Marcus has already demanded a comprehensive action plan within 30 days. I have no doubt he'll monitor every single step we take." Nathan leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply. "We have no choice but to deliver. But first, I need to meet with General Carter as soon as he disembarks. This is not a time for excuses or avoidance." At the arrival gate, Marcus Carter stood waiting for his father, accompanied by a small legal team he had assembled in case the situation required escalation. His face showed a mix of worry and determination. Despite his deep respect for his father's composure, Marcus couldn't stand the idea of him being treated unfairly. Turning to Christopher Hale, who had joined him at the gate, Marcus asked, "Where is he? Have they started disembarking?" Christopher glanced at his watch. "They're exiting now. He should be here in just a minute or two." Finally, General Daniel Carter appeared at the exit, his posture upright, his calm demeanor unshaken despite the unpleasant events of the flight. Marcus moved toward him quickly, grasping his hand firmly. "Dad," Marcus said, his concern clear. "Are you okay? I heard everything. They had no right to treat you that way." General Carter placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder and smiled faintly. "I'm fine, Marcus. Don't make this into more than it needs to be, but I hope you realize this isn't just about me. It's about how people treat one another." Marcus nodded, though his eyes still burned with determination. "I know, and that's exactly why I'm going to make sure things change." As General Carter and Marcus entered the VIP lounge, Nathan Gray and Linda Reeves stood up immediately, attempting to maintain professional composure despite the tension in the air. Nathan stepped forward, extending his hand. "General Carter, I'm Nathan Gray, CEO of Horizon Airways. First and foremost, I want to offer my sincerest apologies for what happened on your flight. This was unacceptable, and I assure you we will take the necessary steps to ensure it never happens again." General Carter shook his hand, his expression serious but calm. "I appreciate your apology, Mr. Gray. But remember, an apology only means something if it's followed by real action. I don't want anyone else to go through what I experienced, no matter who they are or where they're sitting." Nathan nodded, visibly relieved that Carter's tone wasn't harsher. But before he could speak further, Marcus interjected, his voice firm and direct. "Mr. Gray, an apology isn't enough to fix this. I need to know exactly what Horizon plans to do to address the systemic issues that allowed this to happen. What's your plan for staff training? For handling complaints? This isn't the first time I've heard of incidents like this, but I'm determined to make sure it's the last." Linda stepped in, her tone calm yet resolute. "We've already started drafting a comprehensive reform plan, which includes unconscious bias training for all employees. Additionally, we're revising our complaint handling process to ensure every passenger is treated fairly and respectfully." Marcus frowned slightly. "I want to see the detailed plan within 7 days. If not, we'll discuss this on a different platform, whether through the media or the courts." Nathan nodded, his face taut as he clearly felt the weight of Marcus's words. "You have my word, Mr. Carter. We'll have the plan sent to you as soon as possible." And once again, "General Carter, I promise you that Horizon will change." General Carter placed a hand on his son's shoulder, offering a faint smile. "Marcus, let's give them the chance to follow through. Real change takes time. We don't need to rush it." Meanwhile, in another meeting room at the airport, Mark Greaves, the head of HR at Horizon Airways, sat across from Olivia Bennett, his expression firm but measured. Holding the report on the incident with General Daniel Carter, he addressed her in a steady tone. "Miss Bennett, your actions not only violated company policy but caused significant harm to our reputation. This is not something that can be overlooked." Olivia lowered her head, her voice breaking with emotion as she replied, "Mr. Greaves, I know I was wrong. I allowed unconscious biases to affect how I judged a passenger. I deeply regret my actions and am willing to take full responsibility." Mark studied her for a moment before speaking. "You will be temporarily suspended and required to complete a mandatory training program on unconscious bias and customer handling. This is your chance to make things right, but let me be clear, there won't be another opportunity." Olivia nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. The weight of the disciplinary action pressed heavily on her, but she knew it was necessary. If she wanted to grow from this mistake, she needed to confront it head-on. That evening, Marcus Carter and his father sat together in a quiet cafe near the airport. The glow of the warm lights reflected off their coffee cups as they discussed the day's events. Marcus leaned forward, his face thoughtful as he said, "Dad, I'm going to make sure Horizon keeps its promises. I won't let this stop at just an apology." General Carter sipped his coffee, his gaze distant but calm. "You're doing the right thing, Marcus, but remember, change doesn't happen overnight. If you can push them to fix their system, you'll have accomplished something truly meaningful." Marcus smiled faintly. "I'm not doing this just for you, Dad. I'm doing it for everyone who deserves to be treated with respect." General Carter looked at his son with quiet pride, his voice steady but soft. "That's the kind of man you've always been, Marcus." Under the cafe's warm light, the soldier and the businessman sat together, their resolve unshaken. They both understood that the flight wasn't the end of the journey, it was the beginning of a battle for justice. The public outcry over the incident continued to grow. With Marcus's determination and General Carter's reputation as a respected national figure, the pressure on Horizon Airways intensified. A week after the incident, Horizon issued an internal announcement titled, "Commitment from Horizon Airways, We Must Change for the Better." The message, distributed to all employees, from senior leadership to flight attendants and ground staff, outlined the company's plans to launch a comprehensive customer service reform program. It emphasized their commitment to rebuilding trust with passengers and ensuring fairness for all. At Horizon's New York office, Linda Reeves read a response email from Marcus Carter. The tone was firm but professional, carrying enough weight to make her and her team feel the pressure. Subject: Response to Reform Plan. "Dear Ms. Reeves, I have received your announcement regarding Horizon Airways Reform Plan. While the proposed commitments are appreciated, they must be translated into concrete actions. I expect to see a progress report within the next 30 days, detailing achieved objectives and specific changes. If no tangible progress is evident, my legal team and I will pursue alternative measures, including media and legal channels, to ensure accountability. Sincerely, Marcus Carter." Linda sighed as she set her coffee cup on the table, her expression tense. She knew Marcus wasn't one to make idle threats. As a successful young entrepreneur, he had the resources and influence to turn the story into a full-blown media storm. Wasting no time, Linda called for an emergency meeting with Horizon's senior management team. In the conference room, the tension was palpable as Nathan Gray addressed the team directly. "Are we prepared to handle Marcus Carter?" he asked Linda. "We can't afford any missteps." Linda nodded, her tone resolute. "We've already started implementing mandatory training sessions for employees. I'm also working with unconscious bias experts to design a program that's practical and impactful. Additionally, we're overhauling our customer complaint handling process to make it more transparent and fair. We have 30 days to prove we're serious about change." Nathan didn't respond immediately, but the worry in his eyes was evident. He knew Marcus wasn't just demanding improvements. He was challenging Horizon to demonstrate its ability to regain public trust. At a Horizon Airways training center in Denver, Olivia Bennett began her first day of mandatory training. She entered the classroom with a heavy heart, her mind still weighed down by guilt. Around her sat more than 20 employees, flight attendants, ticket counter staff, and customer service representatives, all required to attend the program. The instructor, Dr. Hannah Lopez, was a seasoned expert in unconscious bias training. Standing at the front of the room, she introduced herself with a calm but authoritative tone. "Welcome, everyone. Today, we'll be discussing the hidden biases that can influence our decisions and how they affect the way we interact with others. This will be a difficult but necessary conversation." Dr. Lopez began with a video that illustrated how biases often manifest in subtle but harmful ways. The room fell silent as the video concluded with a powerful question. Are you truly seeing the person in front of you, or just your assumptions about them? As Olivia watched, a wave of guilt swept over her. She couldn't help but think of the moment she had asked General Carter to leave his first-class seat, her actions based entirely on unconscious judgment. At the cafe that evening, Marcus received an update from Linda Reeves. The email assured him that Horizon's leadership was fully committed to the reform plan. Marcus read the message carefully, but he wasn't ready to relax just yet. Turning to his father, he said, "They're making promises, Dad, but I'll make sure they follow through." General Carter nodded. "Good, but remember, Marcus, real change takes persistence. It's not about their words in the first week. It's about their actions in the years to come." Marcus smiled faintly. "I understand, Dad, but I won't let them get away with empty promises." As Horizon's reform efforts began to take shape, the journey toward accountability and change was far from over. For Olivia, the training sessions were a step toward redemption. For Marcus, the fight for fairness was a commitment he wouldn't abandon. And for General Carter, this moment wasn't just about him. It was about ensuring dignity for everyone. The road ahead would be challenging, but the first steps had been taken. At Horizon Airways Training Center in Dallas, Olivia Bennett nervously walked into a room filled with other employees, flight attendants, ticket agents, and customer service representatives, all attending the company's newly implemented training on unconscious bias. The session was a cornerstone of Horizon's broader reform plan, prompted by the incident involving General Daniel Carter. The instructor, Dr. Maya Russell, an expert in bias awareness and customer relations, stood at the front of the room. Her silver hair and calm, authoritative voice immediately commanded attention as she welcomed everyone. "Good morning, everyone. Today's session is about identifying and overcoming unconscious bias in customer service. We'll examine how our assumptions influence the way we treat others, often without us realizing it." Seated in the second row, Olivia felt a knot in her stomach. She knew she was one of the individuals under the most scrutiny. Dr. Russell began by showing a short video. It depicted service employees making snap judgments about customers based on appearance, often leading to unfair treatment. The video ended with a striking question. Do you truly know the person in front of you, or are you seeing them through the lens of your biases? The room fell silent. Olivia felt a wave of guilt wash over her as the memory of asking General Carter to leave his first-class seat resurfaced. At the time, she had believed she was following protocol, but now it was painfully clear how wrong she had been. Walking around the room, Dr. Russell addressed each participant with a serious yet non-judgmental gaze. Finally, she stopped in front of Olivia. "Miss Bennett," Dr. Russell began, her tone calm but direct. "Would you be willing to share your experience? I understand you recently encountered a significant situation. Olivia swallowed nervously and nodded. Yes, I made a big mistake. I asked a passenger, a man with a valid first-class ticket, to move to economy because I didn't think he belonged there. My judgment was completely clouded by personal bias. Dr. Russell offered a small, understanding smile. Acknowledging a mistake is the first step, but what's more important is what you've learned from it. What do you think needs to change in how you view and handle situations? Olivia was silent for a moment before responding. I need to learn to see people for who they are, not through the lens of my assumptions. I need to remember that every customer deserves respect no matter how they look. Dr. Russell nodded approvingly. Exactly. And this principle doesn't just apply to customers, it applies to everyone. Customer service isn't just about following policies. It's about building trust. As Horizon rolled out its reform initiatives, Marcus Carter and his father, General Daniel Carter, quietly monitored the company's progress. General Carter seldom spoke about the incident, but he always listened intently as Marcus shared updates. One evening, over dinner at Marcus's home, he handed his father a document. Dad, Horizon just sent over their first progress report. They've started rolling out the training programs and updated their complaint handling process. It seems like they're trying. General Carter skimmed the document, then looked up. It's a good start, he said. But what really matters isn't what they say in the first week. It's whether they can sustain it for years to come. Marcus nodded. I understand. Don't worry, Dad. I'll keep following up. I won't let them get away with empty promises. Inside Horizon Airways headquarters, the reforms were causing ripples. Among the leadership team, opinions were divided. While some saw Marcus's demands as excessive, others viewed this as a necessary wake-up call to rebuild customer trust. Linda Reeves, standing before a whiteboard in the conference room, wrote the phrase, "Change or be replaced," in bold letters. We don't have any other choice, Linda said, her tone resolute. If we don't improve our service, we'll lose our customers. Not just people like General Carter, but everyone watching this story unfold. Nathan Gray, seated at the head of the table, nodded. Marcus Carter is a challenge, but he's also an opportunity. If we commit to real change, this could be a turning point for Horizon. Just days after Horizon Airways rolled out its reform plan, the story of the incident began spreading rapidly on social media. A passenger from flight HA-17 had posted a detailed account describing how General Carter had been unfairly asked to leave his first-class seat. The post quickly went viral, garnering thousands of shares and comments. One excerpt resonated deeply with readers. The elderly man sat quietly in the economy cabin, not saying a word, despite being treated unfairly. But what shocked me most was when I learned who he was. Major General Daniel Carter, a national hero. How could someone who spent his life serving this country be treated like this? Comments flooded in, many expressing outrage. This is unacceptable. Horizon Airways owes him and every passenger an apology. They need to retrain their staff immediately. How does this happen in 2024? The public backlash forced Horizon's leadership to accelerate their reform efforts. Nathan Gray and Linda Reeves worked tirelessly to manage the fallout, but they knew that words alone wouldn't suffice. In his office, Marcus Carter scrolled through the flood of articles and comments, his jaw tightening. The situation had grown beyond the airline's control. It was now a public matter. Christopher Hale, Marcus's close friend, walked in, pointing to the laptop with a half-smirk. Have you seen this? It's spreading like wildfire, Christopher said. Horizon is being backed into a corner. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He knew that public pressure was a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it forced Horizon to act quickly. On the other, if mishandled, it could escalate the situation into an even larger crisis. Finally, Marcus spoke. I don't want them to just issue a PR-friendly apology and consider the matter resolved. I want real change, systemic change. Christopher nodded. What's your next move? Marcus thought for a moment. I'm going to hold a press conference. This isn't just about my father. It's about setting a precedent for how businesses treat their customers. It's time to make that message clear. At Horizon Airways headquarters, Nathan Gray sat with Linda Reeves and the rest of the executive team, reviewing the latest media report. The opening lines were grim. Over 500 comments and posts related to the incident involving General Daniel Carter on Flight HA-17 have surfaced online. Approximately 82% of them are negative, posing a significant threat to the company's reputation. The story has now been picked up by major outlets, including CNN, The New York Times, and The Washington Post. Nathan sighed heavily, placing the report down on the table. "We're in the middle of a media storm. If we don't handle this correctly, it could destroy us." Linda, calm but resolute, replied, "I've been in discussions with the PR team. We need to issue a public apology, but that alone won't be enough. We need to announce a detailed reform plan that demonstrates we're serious about long-term change." Nathan leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. Marcus Carter won't accept a superficial apology. He'll be looking for something groundbreaking. Linda hesitated before offering a suggestion. "We could invite General Carter to join our reform process. Maybe even offer him a seat on an advisory board. That would show we're not just making amends, but also listening to those affected." Nathan considered this for a moment before nodding. "All right, arrange a meeting with him, but first make sure our public apology is flawless." A few days later, Marcus Carter stood on a stage at a conference center in Atlanta, addressing a room filled with journalists, activists, and veterans. Behind him, a large screen displayed the words, "Respect is a right, not a privilege." Taking a deep breath, Marcus began. "My father, Major General Daniel Carter, has spent his life protecting this country. He's not someone who seeks attention. He's always served quietly, with dignity and dedication. But on Horizon Airways Flight HA-17, he was treated unfairly. Why? Simply because of his modest appearance." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "This story isn't just about my father. It's about the millions of people who face judgment and unfair treatment every day because they don't fit someone else's idea of what they should look like. This needs to change. Now." Marcus went on to outline specific demands for Horizon Airways and called on other businesses to examine how they treat their customers. He concluded with a powerful statement. "We cannot rewrite the past, but we can shape the future, a future built on fairness and respect." The room erupted into applause, the message resonating deeply with the audience. Following Marcus's press conference, Horizon Airways moved quickly to act. Linda Reeves personally reached out to General Carter, inviting him to join the airline's newly established Customer Service Advisory Board. The board was designed to oversee reforms and ensure that meaningful changes were implemented across the organization. During a call with General Daniel Carter, Linda Reeves, the head of customer service at Horizon Airways, spoke with a tone of genuine sincerity. "General Carter," Linda began, "we believe your experience and insight will bring tremendous value to our efforts. We would be honored if you would help us build a customer service system that is transparent, respectful, and fair to everyone." There was a long pause before Carter replied in his steady, deep voice. "I'm not doing this for Horizon Airways. I'm doing it for people like me, those who might not have the chance to speak up." Linda felt a wave of relief. General Carter had agreed to join the advisory board. Elsewhere, Olivia Bennett had completed her mandatory unconscious bias training. As she walked out of the final session, she felt lighter yet deeply reflective. A newfound determination had taken root within her. Acknowledging her mistake was only the first step. What mattered more was her commitment to ensuring she never repeated it. Soon after, Olivia was called back to work, but with a new role: mentoring younger flight attendants on serving passengers with fairness and respect. It was a chance for her to transform her mistake into a lesson for others. Sitting at her desk one evening, Olivia decided to write a letter to General Carter. She wanted to offer him a heartfelt apology that went beyond words spoken in haste. "Dear General Daniel Carter, my name is Olivia Bennett, the flight attendant who served you on Horizon Airways Flight HA-17. I am writing this letter to offer my sincerest and deepest apology for my actions that day. As I reflect on my behavior, I realize how profoundly wrong I was. My actions were not only unprofessional, but also deeply disrespectful to you, a man who has served this country with honor and dedication. That day, I allowed unconscious biases to cloud my judgment. I failed to see the person behind the uniform, and for that, I am truly sorry. Since that incident, I have taken part in extensive training on unconscious bias and customer service. More importantly, I have taken the time to confront my own assumptions and prejudices. I've learned that respect and fairness must form the foundation of everything we do, regardless of someone's appearance or background. Meeting someone like you should have been a moment of honor for me. Yet, I failed to recognize it at the time. I can only hope that through my actions moving forward, I can demonstrate that I've learned from my mistakes. I also want to thank you, not just for your service to this nation, but for the grace and dignity you showed during and after that flight. Your calmness in the face of such treatment has left a deep impression on me, and it has motivated me to become not only a better professional, but also a better person. I understand if forgiveness doesn't come easily. However, I hope that one day you might consider accepting my apology. Thank you for teaching me a lesson I will carry with me for the rest of my life. With the deepest respect and regret, Olivia Bennett. After signing the letter by hand, Olivia placed it in an envelope and gave it to Horizon's leadership team, ensuring it was delivered personally to General Carter. A week later, Olivia received a handwritten response from General Carter. Dear Miss Bennett, thank you for your letter. It takes courage to admit one's mistakes, and even greater courage to take steps to correct them. I appreciate your apology and the efforts you've made to learn from this experience. As a soldier, I've always believed that growth often comes from challenges and failures. I am glad to see that you have embraced this opportunity to grow. I accept your apology. May this experience guide you in serving others with fairness and respect in the future. Sincerely, Daniel Carter. The note was brief but carried immense weight. As Olivia read the words, a wave of relief and gratitude washed over her. She knew she could not undo the past, but she could shape how she acted moving forward. A few months later, Horizon Airways earned recognition from an independent organization for its bold reforms in customer service. The airline not only regained the trust of its passengers, but also became a model in the aviation industry for addressing and rectifying mistakes transparently. General Carter continued to serve on Horizon's advisory board, quietly influencing policies and ensuring fairness for future travelers. He avoided the media spotlight, preferring instead to focus on the work at hand. His story became a powerful example of grace, humility, and the transformative power of second chances. Marcus Carter, now reassured that Horizon was heading in the right direction, stepped back from actively monitoring the airline. He returned to his business ventures, knowing he had played a part in bringing about meaningful change. Olivia Bennett, once a flight attendant who made a serious mistake, became an inspiration for others. Through her mentorship and dedication, she helped train new employees, ensuring they embraced the values of respect and service. She was no longer just an employee, she became a symbol of redemption and growth. The story of General Daniel Carter is more than a reminder to honor those who dedicate their lives to service. It is a profound lesson in how we treat one another in our everyday lives. From General Carter's steadfast composure to Marcus's relentless determination and Olivia's heartfelt transformation, this story demonstrates that mistakes don't have to define us. They can be opportunities for growth. Though General Carter's journey in this story may have reached its conclusion, the lessons he imparted continue to echo. It serves as a call for us all to live with greater kindness, fairness, and the courage to make amends. What are your thoughts on this story? What lessons have you taken from this journey? Share them in the comments below and help spread the message of respect and compassion by sharing this story. If you'd like to hear more inspiring tales like this one, don't forget to click like, share, and subscribe. Your support motivates us to continue delivering meaningful lessons and uplifting narratives. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next journey.